much light. So very warm welcome. Lovely to see so many of us here tonight at Dharma Night, this special Dharma Night, because we've got our president, Jnanavaca, here with us. But I'll say a little bit more about him and what president is in a moment. But we'll start, as we usually do, by orientating towards the three jewels. In call and response. Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Dharmaya.
Namo Dharmaya.
Namo Sanghaya.
Namo Sanghaya.
Namo Namah. Great, yeah, so as I say, really lovely to have Jnanavaca with us. He just came down on Monday, so it's just a short trip from him, but the first time he's been with us in 13 months. So it's just really lovely to have him back with us. We were studying in the team earlier on today, really gripping study, actually. I was very affected by that. But what is a president? Some of you know very well what a president is, but that normal usage doesn't quite help here. So Jnanavaca is our president. It means he doesn't live in Cambridge. All of the Triratna Buddhist centres across the world, I don't know how many there are, but there's a fair number, are independent charities. That's the way we're sort of organised, such that actually each centre is sort of independently taken responsibility for. However, centres have presidents from other centres, and partly that is so that we're not just independent, we're interconnected, we're kind of part of a network, part of a spiritual community, which really means individual friendship. So in a way, our president, well, not in a way, our president is a friend to the people who are working here, anyone who's kind of coming along to the centre, kind of taking an interest and a concern for our spiritual welfare. And it's helpful to have not only, of course, people, we're all trying to do that, aren't we, but actually have someone from outside the situation to come in and sort of link us up, as it were, as a sort of worldwide spiritual community. So that's what Jnanavaca does very well, because it's quite a responsibility, isn't it, to sort of be a friend to such a variety of people. It's an honour to few, and Jnanavaca being our honoured, our chosen president. I think it was about 2 years ago, was it 3 years ago, that you became something like that? Anyway.
Became president?
Yeah.
Oh no, I think it's longer. It's 2019, I think.
Is it 2019? Wow. Doesn't time fly?
Yeah, it does.
Yep. But yeah, we feel very, very fortunate, very lucky to have Jnanavaca, who's already given so much to the centre. I mean, a much cherished kind of teacher and speaker, communicator of the Dharma, but also a very good friend to many. So we're very, very pleased with our our president. And as I say, he's not been around for a wee while, and that will become clear as to why. Because a wee while ago, Jnanavaca got a diagnosis of cancer, of prostate cancer. So what I thought I could do tonight is just interview Jnanavaca a bit about his time. It's been quite a time, I think it'd be fair to say. And just see where we go with that. Yeah, but obviously particularly about his experience of being diagnosed with cancer. He's also recently been to India, so he hasn't been just laid up in a hospital bed. Yeah, so we'll see where we get to. But yeah, I'd like to perhaps start there, Jnanavaca. So do you remember what it was like? So presumably you had the idea of going for a test, and what was that? Could you tell us where you were at that point, and what was that like, kind of going off for a test?
Well, first of all, I just want to say it's lovely to be back here. Really nice to see familiar faces and some new faces. It's been a wee while, as you've said, since I've come, and I sort of, until I arrived, didn't realise that I'd sort of missed seeing people. Because I've been sort of preoccupied, and it is lovely to have just a lovely reception and warm welcome that I've been receiving. So thank you. Yeah, so me and it was prostate cancer. It's prostate cancer that I was diagnosed with, and I just want to really publicly say a really heartfelt big thank you to Arthasiddhi. Because were it not for Arthasiddhi, I wouldn't have gone for... Can you hear me all right, by the way? Yeah. I don't think I would have gone and got a blood test. I didn't have any symptoms. The tests aren't mandatory. They're discretionary, and I hadn't thought about it. But Arthasiddhi urged me, and I know others, to get tested. And so I thought I would. And I thought nothing of it when I actually had the test, but it came back, you know, with a positive result, as it were. And well, it came back, and I'm fortunate in that the cancer hadn't spread. So I think I owe Arthasiddhi my life, really. I was saying to him earlier, I mean, I could still die of cancer, etc., but I went to see a physiotherapist. I had some radiotherapy, etc. Anyway, and I had to see a physio before that. And the physio said to me, how did it come about that you found out you had cancer? Why did you get tested? And I said it was on the recommendation, advice, urging of a friend. And he said, well, that friend might just as well have saved your life. So we often say that people have changed our lives, and we sort of mean it, but this is literal. I do mean it. Yes, I feel very grateful. Actually, I feel grateful to a lot of, maybe I'll come back to the gratitude. It feels like a theme in my experience over the last number of months. But to go back to your question, so I went and got tested probably in July last year, didn't think anything of it, went away to lead a retreat for 10 days, came back, and the PSA level was elevated. So then that was a concern, and then that meant more tests and more tests and more tests. And suddenly I was in this sort of regime of tests. I think I knew quite before the test results, well, once I'd had that elevated result, I think I knew that it was cancer. I couldn't be sure. And there was anxiety in those first, well, in the waiting. There was some anxiety, and I think that what I did was I kind of read as much as I could online, which is not always... Anyway, you don't want to do that necessarily, but I couldn't resist. And And then I had an MRI scan test result come back. And so I remember, what they do is, I was sort of, the result was posted on an online system, and but I didn't have access to the test results. Normally a doctor would then have to meet with you, but you can nominate a medical professional to have access to the test results. So a good friend of mine, Jnanavaca, is a GP, and I'd nominated him and Sangha, who's a nurse. And so it was Jnanavaca who came and told me. I remember it vividly one morning. He came up, he said, the MRI results are here, and he told me that I had cancer. I was having my breakfast, and I felt quite calm, actually, because I think I knew that that was what the result was. What I didn't expect was that the MRI indicated that the cancer had spread to the bone. And that was a bit of a shock. But then, subsequently, about a week later, my urologist said, well, the MRI is not the most accurate way of identifying stuff in the bone. You need a bone scan. And I had a bone scan, and sort of miraculously, it was clear. So the cancer doesn't seem to have spread to the bone. You can never be sure, but that's how it seemed. So internally, I just had this kind of weird mix of experience. There was some anxiety, more in advance. Then there was a certain sense of, yes, I think I knew this. There was some sort of upset, I think, particularly that first night. Sangha, a good friend of mine, came to stay with me, and he said, you know, I'll come and stay with you, which was very sweet. But what I didn't anticipate or expect was also a sort of euphoric feeling. It was exhilarating. I felt exhilarated and ecstatic in a way that you don't sort of anticipate. That's not what we normally expect. And it was like reality had come a bit closer reality is always close, but in my awareness it had become closer. Death had come closer. Mortality was more vivid in my awareness, and it was exhilarating. Maybe that doesn't... It was like I knew that the Dharma was true, and I felt so blessed to have found the Dharma, and I knew it was true. And now, as it were, there was a sort of intensity of something was going to happen. I had to practice, or, you know, it was very real. Mm. So a mixture of anxiety, sort of shock, and this exhilaration. Mm. Quite peculiar. Mm-hmm. I remember when my mother died, I had some grief, as you would expect, but it was mixed in with this almost ecstatic joy. Partly, again, it was this brush with reality, death, bereavement in that case, but also a knowing that the Dharma was true. And I don't know how I'd be when I come to die. I suspect there will be some fear and whatever, but I also have sort of this contradictory conviction that death is all right, and that the Dharma is true. Mm-hmm. So there's kind of different impulses going on.
That's really interesting. That somehow that awful news, you know, from an ordinary perspective, pushed you into knowing that the Dharma was true.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of intuitive sense. And then, of course, what then arises is, what arose for me is gratitude. I feel so blessed to have a teacher in Bhante and other teachers, and then be part of our Sangha. Because as soon as news broke, I was flooded with so much well-wishing. It was like, I don't know, birthday and Christmas and everything. Do you know what I mean? My room turned into what looked like a florist shop and cards and chocolates and so much well-wishing. It was difficult to not feel happy and grateful, grateful to be part of this Sangha, this community, our community, to be so, my life is very rich in friendship. And suddenly all that became more real, and I wasn't taking it for granted. It became more meaningful. So I think I felt a lot of love and gratitude. Yeah.
So can I ask it? Is it a bit like a veil? Kind of, we have this sort of veil, thinking that we're not going to die.
Yeah.
And then that gets taken away.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is like that. I should say the veil's gone up again. So I've had my treatment and I now feel immortal again, which is ridiculous. Not quite true. But I jest slightly. But I'm no longer in touch with the exhilaration that I felt in those first few days and weeks. I remember saying to Deva Mitra, Deva Mitra is a friend who lives in Sukhavati below me, and he's got prostate cancer, metastasized prostate cancer. And so I said to him, I feel extraordinarily ecstatic. And he said, yes, you've had a brush with death, that's why. And it'll go. and it does. I guess it wasn't possible, or hasn't been possible for me to live at that level. I've come down more. The gratitude's still there. Yeah. Yeah.
So how has it affected you, kind of thinking long term? Okay, the experience has shifted, the ecstasy has disappeared, but has it made a difference?
Yeah, it has. So I found out in July probably. I've had 6 months of hormone treatment, which is something called androgen deprivation therapy, which blocks the body from producing testosterone. And as those of you who know Arthasiddhi will know, that has then various other side effects. And then within that 6 months, December, January time, I had 4 weeks of radiotherapy. And it's been a little light. I haven't suffered too much from difficult side effects. I've been relatively fortunate, and fortunate to be living near a hospital, Bart's Hospital, which has a very good radiotherapy department, etc. So I've been seen very quickly and promptly and da-da-da-da. Anyway, to go back to your question, there's been it's been a little bit like being on a solitary retreat. I can't quite... Obviously, I haven't been on solitary retreat, and obviously I've been surrounded by friends and people, and I live in a community, and they've been wonderful, etc. But there's something about when you have a serious illness that you feel alone with it, because nobody else is quite going through that experience, even though they're supportive. And I think my psyche went inward more, naturally went inward more, like it would do on a solitary retreat. And probably also I have not been doing so many outward things, teaching and coming here and doing things. So it's been a little like going inward, and it's done my meditation practice good. It's a bit, again, maybe counterintuitive. I've just felt closer to the Dharma, to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, to death. And particularly what I've been trying to do is loosen my grip on identification with the body as me or mine. Loosen that. And of course I've been trying to do that, ever since I was ordained, in things like the sixth element practice and sadhana practice and study and etc., etc. But this has helped me loosen. There was what's the word? Incentive to loosen. There was a sort of urgency. I need to try and let go as much as I can of identifying with this physical body and my ordinary mind, this personality, this identity that I've built up, if I'm going to stand a chance of, at death, taking opportunity, the opportunity that death is said to afford, which is the opportunity of liberation, of not being compelled to come back to taking a form. And I really believe that that is a real opportunity. Whether I'll be able to take it or not, of course I can't know. But this was like a real incentive to practice, to let go now as much as I could. Okay, that sounds a bit rational, but it was more intuitive than that. It was more like, I don't know, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas were present. I would just have to let go. It felt very easy to let go. And I felt blessed. I felt blessings. I mean, that sounds a bit, maybe it sounds a bit dramatic. That's how it felt. I felt blessed to the extent where at times I couldn't help but think to myself, this cancer is just what I need. Just what I need. Because I think I suffer from complacency. I know I'm not alone in this, but I'm not that self-motivated. I'm probably towards laziness. And it was like this cancer was a teaching that said, it's urgent. There's an urgency. And it felt like I had enough, thankfully enough Shraddha to make use of that. So at times it's felt like, oh, this is just what I need. Not in some sort of literal, I don't know, in a mythic way. There's a sort of mythic element to it. And in that sense, I've sometimes played with the idea that this is just what I need. So there's been that. It's also been moving to be suddenly, I've not had serious illnesses. Well, I did as a kid actually, but I don't remember that. I've not had serious illnesses in my life, my adult life, that have, suddenly I was part of this NHS system. And it was so moving to just see the care that the medical professionals were taking with me and with others. And meeting other people with cancer was moving. I met a friend, there was a man,
Yeah, do.
I'd go in for this radiotherapy treatment every day, Monday to Friday, and my appointments were always quite early, so I was almost always the first, one of the first to arrive. But I'd sit in a chair in the waiting room. You have this whole preparation which, it's embarrassing. Anyway, there's I don't need, well, maybe I'll go into it. Anyway, there's a whole preparation. You have to do some things with your bowels and bladder and all the rest of it. And I'd always be sort of sitting in the same chair, and opposite me would be sitting this other man, this gentleman, and I'd always say, good morning, hello, da-da-da. And then that was it, really. And anyway, one day his sister came to drop him off. So then she was more chatty and talkative. And she said, so I was just, I don't know, talking to her, and she said she lived on the Roman Road, and I live on the Roman Road in Bethnal Green in London. And I said, I live on the Roman Road. And she said, where? And I said, I live above the Buddhist Centre. Do you know the London Buddhist Centre? And she said, yes, of course I know it. I'm a good friend of Sarjana's. And it turns out that Peter and her have been childhood friends of Sarjana's, who's not here tonight. He knows the story anyway. And it was so moving to suddenly feel, I don't know, just the connections. These were, so then, she was showing me pictures of Sarjana as a wee boy while I'm waiting for radiotherapy and pizza. And, it's lovely, lovely little things like that that just feel very heart-opening. There was a lot there that just felt very connecting, heart-opening, moving. Yeah.
Yeah, and was that something of a theme there, that it sort of it brought you closer to reality, but closer to other people as well? It seems like there's a sort of sensitivity, greater sensitivity.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and also, you know, I in meditation, I'd naturally then want to send metta, cultivate metta, or do the bodhicitta practice for people who are suffering in the world, people I knew and most people I didn't know. And it's a cliche, but I think having something like this opens you up a bit more to the existence of suffering in the world and how it's a human thing. And obviously there are horrible ways that people are suffering right now all over the world, but there's also the suffering of just having a human body and it falling apart, doing what human bodies do, doing what everything does. The dukkha of that, so feeling connected with that.
And what about the area of, I mean, presumably in certain ways you needed help and you weren't able to do certain things. How was that, receiving help?
Yeah. But it's a bit sort of humbling, isn't it, like asking for help. Fortunately, I didn't sort of have too much trouble asking for help. And my community are very good. And I didn't need too much help. As I say, I didn't suffer too much. There were lots of people who were saying, oh, let me come with you to the hospital and so forth. But I didn't have to do very much. I live with, at that time I was living with 9 other men. We have a cooking rota, and I was allowed to not be on the cooking rota. So I wasn't cooking, I wasn't shopping, I wasn't doing any real household chores. Apart from that, I didn't sort of need any other help. Do you know what I mean? It was fine. What is interesting is you feel not in control. It's like you're in this medical world, Arthapiriya's nodding, and you're not, I don't really know what's going on, and the doctors don't have that much time, and you're sort of being processed into this system, so you're not in very much control. I mean, not long after, well, probably just a couple of days after finding out that I've got localized prostate cancer, that it hadn't spread, well, I had to make a decision as to whether I had surgery to remove the prostate or this hormone treatment and radiotherapy to try and zap the cancer. And the doctor just said, oh, well, both are equally effective medically. So it's like you have to choose which side effects do you want to live with. And so suddenly I'm like, oh, not only have I got cancer, I've now got to read up on all the side effects of these 2 treatment options, none of which are very pretty, and then try and work out which ones do I want. And they all come with risk factors attached and, etc. And, one way you can become incontinent, another way you can get bowel problems. What do you prefer? Anyway, fortunately, so far I've avoided most of those side effects. Yeah. So you're thrust into that sort of world, and to the medics. Actually, no, I did receive some. I had some conversations which felt very empathic and sensitive. Yeah.
And so, during that time, you talk about this kind of shift in your perspective, in your experience. Did that lead you also to sort of be reflecting on your life prior to that, and sort of how, I mean, obviously you talked about urgency was sort of built into the experience, but did it also leave you sort of thinking, oh, why have I been doing that, or why don't I do more of this, or is there anything in that area?
No, not really. I was just kind of thinking urgency. There was urgency, but oh goodness, I'm not very good at urgency in a certain sort of way. My inner life is more about trying to let go and open up and trust and surrender and open up to the blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, which you can't force. You have to sort of open up to and relax to. You can't sort of, urgency doesn't work. It doesn't sort of work with my temperament. And so if I did sort of reflect a bit on my life, but again, maybe my temperament, I mean, of course I could have done more, I could have practiced harder, I could have been more generous, more kind, more whatever, but mainly when I look back, I just felt grateful. I mainly just felt so grateful to have found the Dharma and to be practicing. I think I don't particularly dwell on the negative in my own life, if you see what I mean, or which has got its pros and cons. I'm not saying that's just a virtue. It's just a temperamental thing. And mostly I felt incredibly grateful to Bhante, of course, but then so many people have helped me in my life. Dharma teachers, Arthasiddhi being one of them, and others in this room, but also secular teachers. I've had a lot of love and friendship and Kalyana Mitrata, and so gratitude was mainly. I sort of repeatedly came back to, look, if I were to die now, I don't feel I've got regrets. That doesn't mean that I've lived a perfect life or practiced in a perfect way, far, far from it. And, but, maybe somebody just said to me, "You're very easy on yourself, aren't you, Jnanavaca?" And I thought, yeah, I am, actually. So I kind of think, oh, look, it's been a good life. I might not have found the Dharma, and actually I have. And I found it, in my 20s. And not only did I find the Dharma, I found this Sangha and Bhante's presentation. How incredibly fortunate. And yeah.
Yeah. So were there particular teachings that you found became more important?
Yeah, I guess so. And I don't know how to talk about this so easily. So Padmasambhava and Green Tara became more important as figures. I haven't done, my sadhana is the Manjudosha Stuti sadhana, Manjudosha practice. I've been doing the Manjudosha sadhana for a number of years. For a number of years before that, I did the Vajrasattva practice. Both of which you could say I'd lent into a sort of wisdom perspective. And it's interesting that over the last, actually before the diagnosis, but for the last couple of years, there's been this sense of this new figure coming into my imaginal world, which was Padmasambhava. And then more recently, it's been Green Tara. And both of them are from the Lotus family. And it's interesting that I've talked about my heart opening more. And I feel there's something connected with those figures. Which feels sort of magical, really. I wasn't going to say this, but like this friend of mine, Sanghajit, works as a palliative care nurse, and he texted me 2 days ago saying that a young man in his hospice is dying of cancer, a 47-year-old man called Andrew Porter, who I didn't know, have never met. And but Andrew, through Sanghaji, Andrew had listened to some of my Dharma talks and was very grateful. And then Sanghaji told me this. And so the last few days when I've been able to remember, I've been chanting the Green Tara mantra for Andrew. Sanghaji, independently of me doing that, was also chanting the Green Tara mantra for him. And he told Andrew that me and him were doing that, and Andrew was really grateful. I don't know why I'm telling you this story, but Andrew died this morning, I think. I had a message this morning that he died. What I'm trying to say, I don't know if the connections sort of go beyond what I can see, what we can see. And it just felt natural to chant the Green Tara mantra for him. He's not a Buddhist. I don't think he was a Buddhist. But obviously he'd listened to some talks of mine and responded, so maybe he was. Sanghaji independently have been chanting the Tara mantra for him. Andrew's consciousness will be somewhere in the bardo now. It's sort of poignant, beautiful, magical. Mm-hmm. So they're sorts of reflections that have been happening for me, a sense of connection more with the world. Another sort of teaching that has been always, well, as far as I can remember, a sort of interest, a thread, is, what is going on here in perception in our ordinary world. And what I've kept coming back to in my reflections is that we live in a world of appearances, that this conditioned world as we experience it isn't ultimately real. It's relatively real in that experience is happening, but it's a world of appearances, like mirages, that behind these appearances, I don't know what there is, and that there's another dimension that's possible in awareness, in consciousness, that goes beyond this world of appearances. This was a study that I was leading this afternoon with the team. That's been a theme that's been with me for many years, but this period of being diagnosed with cancer and having treatment, that theme has been more intense. It's sort of, as you can see, it's linked to trying to let go of this body, which is also an appearance, and trying to connect more deeply with what lies beyond this world of appearances, which is symbolized by these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, these archetypal figures. But there is a reality beyond this world of appearances. I kind of know that. Probably I don't know it deeply enough, and I forget it. And I distract myself. I mean, many of you have heard, last time I was here, I don't know whether it was last time, I was probably talking about wanting to buy an iPad. Do you remember? Or maybe it was 2 years ago or something. And sort of trying to think, oh, you don't need an iPad, da-da-da, you don't need an iPad, da-da-da-da. And on the day that I had one of these test results, I can't remember, I think I just thought, oh, well, sod it, I've got cancer, I'm going to get an iPad. so off I went and bought top of the range iPad Air with a keyboard and everything that goes with it, the pencil. The shop assistant was saying, do you not want to think about it? And I was like, no. I want it. So it's not all, so it's by no means been all reflection on the nature of reality. By any means, I wouldn't want you to think that. I'm quite unintegrated in that way. But if we are talking about what dharmic reflections there were, it's that.
wonder. Yeah, it's lovely to hear all that. I wonder about just asking you a bit more about India, because you got a chance to go to India.
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. It was wonderful. So we had an order convention, as some of you know, in India in January, February, and I had been planning on going with quite a few friends from the London Buddhist Centre, and that was, before I had cancer, or knew I had cancer. I was planning on going to Bodh Gaya, and and then my radiotherapy sort of was scheduled just, I don't know, over that time. So, it was going to start in January and take 4 weeks. But I said to the oncologist, I was hoping to go to India then. And she looked at me and said, why? Like, I'm trying to cure you of cancer and you're wanting to go to India. And I said, oh, well, look, I'm a Buddhist. I'm an ordained Buddhist, and we've got an order convention happening in India from, these dates. And she was the oncologist that is treating Deva Mitra. So she, and Attila, I think. So she knew of our order. Anyway, she said, well, you can hardly rearrange the order convention, can you? So I said, no. So she said, well, let's rearrange the radiotherapy. And she was so good. She brought it forward just a week or two, a couple of weeks, which, again, you don't expect on the NHS. I was just grateful to be seen quickly. So she brought it forward a couple of weeks. Then she said to me, look, after your radiotherapy, you may not want to go to India. And I thought, well, yeah, that's true, I may not. But as the thing was progressing, the radiotherapy was progressing, I wasn't too bad. I was tired, but not too bad. And I just thought, oh, well, I'll be tired in India. And went. And it was just wonderful, absolutely wonderful. 600 or 700 order members at Bodh Gaya. Many people that I knew, people that I travelled out with. But also I was ordained in India in 1999. And there were people there in the order who had been at my ordination ceremony or knew me from those days. And it was a wonderful, wonderful sense of feeling connected with a larger Sangha, a larger order. Also, my sister was ordained about 18 months ago. Bodhi Vandana is her name, and she came out to India. So suddenly I was there with my closest family member, closest living family member, Bodhi Vandana, sitting under the Bodhi tree together with the order around us, or at least a large portion of the order around us. It was absolutely magical, absolutely magical. Have I got time to tell you one more India story?
You have, yeah.
So one of the things about being there was that, who's been to Bodh Gaya? Who's been to Bodh Gaya? Yeah, about a third of you. Well, you feel like you're part of the Buddhist world at Bodh Gaya. It's natural to be a Buddhist. Everybody is a Buddhist because there's nothing else in Bodh Gaya to do, as it were. You wouldn't go there, sort of. Anyway, it's not a great town, but there's a Mahabodhi temple at the very sort of heart of it, and everybody is there to go there. And you're, surrounded by Buddhists from all these different countries and cultures. Thousands, of course, of Tibetan Buddhists, but also Thai and Sri Lankan bhikkhus, and all Buddhists from all over the world. There's this wonderful sense that you can be a Buddhist publicly. So I could walk down the road to the Mahabodhi temple wearing my kesa, while the Tibetans were wearing their robes and so forth, and people would recognize us in our blue shirts and blue clothing, and our cases and say Triratna, and there were mitras who were sometimes the rickshaw drivers, and it was a Buddhist world, and that was extraordinary. At the same time, I felt really so fortunate to be part of our Sangha, and so grateful that Bhante had started our Sangha. You feel this kind of connection, but most, if not all, the other Buddhist groups that were there, and there were thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, most of them seemed to belong to one country and one culture, one race and one culture. So there were the Tibetans, and you didn't see Westerners amongst the Tibetans, the Sri Lankans, and so forth, the Thai. And our Sangha just stood out for being multicultural and having men and women practicing together. We were just different, and I was so glad, because I don't think I could have practiced at least as easily in another context. So you feel this, both this solidarity, this affinity, and one story that just, for me, became emblematic of that sort of experience was, we were meditating one morning under the Bodhi tree, and it's a cacophony. It's a sort of a sea of sound and colour and lights and whatever, as all these other Buddhists are doing their rituals and things. Next to us, or next to me, was well, this small group. There were women being led by a monk, and the women were dressed in white. I think they were from Thailand, I think. And the white was absolutely pristine, beautiful, looked so, I don't know, resplendent. So they were all sitting there meditating, but the monk was also talking in Thai, I presume, with this PA system. And I was trying to meditate, and I just had this thought, I wish he would stop talking. Because it's one thing when there's pujas and chanting and things going on, but actual talking felt a little bit, I don't know, disruptive or whatever. So beautiful sight, but my mind said, I wish he'd stop talking, which he did for a bit, and then he started talking again. And he was obviously leading these women in a ritual. And then I recognized that it was an ordination ceremony. And these women were being ordained as nuns in the Thai tradition. I don't know what the status of that is. But what was extraordinary was that I recognized the Pali words of their ordination ceremony, which are the same as the Pali words of our ordination ceremony. The Pali words that I've recited and I've ordained people, and they're the same words. And I could recognize some of the precepts. They took some additional precepts, which I didn't recognize, and they took the brahmacharya vow, which we don't always do. And but I could recognize what was going on. They were being ordained, and I was witness to their ordination. I felt elated to be witnessing this ordination, but also for being we were brothers and sisters together in the Sangha. Suddenly there was this connection that was very profound, and this silly little voice that said, I wish he would stop talking, was replaced by a joy. And I could both, joyously meditate and wish them well at their ordination and feel connected. Wonderful. Yeah, wonderful. So that's just a little glimpse of India. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it's great.
Lovely story to end with. We've got tea break advancing on. But after tea break, there'll be a bit of time for questions. So do be thinking up your questions over the tea break, and then we'll come back together just a bit of time with Jnanavaca for questions. Before we do a puja, it'd be nice to do a puja all together, ritual all together. Yeah, and then we'll finish at 9:30. But thanks very much, Jnanavaca.
Thank you.
Great, so welcome back. We've got just a bit of time for questions before we do a Buddhist ritual together, puja together. And one question has been put forward already, which is, how are you now? How is your health now? Could we have a bit of clarity on that?
A little medical update.
Yeah, medical update.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention. I am very well, and the prognosis looks very good. So before I started my treatment, I was told that because the cancer hadn't spread, I had an 80% chance that there would be a full cure. Then I had my treatment, and I had another test, I don't know, in March or something, and my PSA level was very low. The oncologist was very pleased with that, indicating that so far it looks like the treatment's worked really well, and she said that that increased the chances of a full cure to 90%. So I've got a 90% chance of a full cure, which is, you know, I'll take those odds. That seems very good. And I'll be monitored, you know, every 6 months for the next few years, and then annually. So should the cancer recur, there'll hopefully be more options, but we'll see. But at the moment, it looks very good. I think I'm told that because it was caught early, prostate cancer is one of the more treatable ones. So unfortunate. But thanks for asking. Sorry not to have mentioned it. Sorry not to have, if you were on tenterhooks, you can have a big sigh of relief. All's well as we know. I mean, there's no certainties, but then there isn't for any of us, is there? Yep.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so any questions, don't all shout at once, but maybe if you just put your hand up, that'd be great. Julia, thank you.
Julia.
Oh, your laugh, Jnanavaca. I tell you, if we could bottle that and pick people up to that in...
We could do a fundraiser, couldn't we, of selling my laugh.
And I remember you, I'm wondering what's next in your Mac series, because I remember the apple. And then I remember before that there was the rain Mac. I'm wondering if you've got, someone had given you some John Lewis vouchers and you were talking about a rain Mac.
Oh yeah, no, I bought that, that's right.
Anyway,
that's true, well done. I'm glad things stay with you guys. I've also mentioned various dharmic things, but don't let that worry you. Don't let that worry you.
Just thinking what you thought about, or if you thought about that word cancer, and if somebody had said to you, oh, you have, lower R24 disease, this is how we treat it.
Yeah.
Do you think your process was different because of this, this word of the story behind cancer?
I don't know. I mean, it's a loaded word. It's a frightening word. I don't know, to be honest. If there was a sort of loadedness to it, that's probably, in my case, it's sort of been a spur, a positive kind of spur. I don't know how much difference it would have made had there been some obscure name for the same disease. I don't completely know. I think I haven't particularly been frightened by the word. Don't think. I mean, the disease, yes, but for me it hasn't been.
Did you meditate on that the specificness of it? Like, did you meditate on the location in your body or anything like that?
On my prostate. I wasn't sure where my prostate was. You find out all sorts of things. And it's quite difficult to, meditate on it. No, I didn't, actually. No, I didn't. I didn't. But what I did feel, as I say, was in meditation, the sort of love and energy and blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And it is an embodied experience. It's not just an idea, it's an actual sort of, well, for want of a better word, a physical experience. And that felt very good. That felt very good, yeah. Yeah. It's just great having a context like the Dharma when things go wrong. I was saying, you know, in the tea break to Tom, you know, I met other cancer patients, and you know, I felt for some of them because I just felt you're alone with this, or much more alone than I am. Yeah. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Julia. Hi, Joe.
So I guess following on from that, I would imagine you were quite a different patient to the ordinary patient that most would be my perspective on,
Maybe,
at
yeah.
least my guess on them.
Yeah.
Did you feel as though the life that you'd led and the Dharma perspective you have in that, did you feel that changed interactions with people around you during your interactions, particularly in the hospital with other patients, with other healthcare professionals?
Yeah, to some degree, I maybe it did. To some degree, maybe it did. But I also felt somehow that I was the recipient of a lot of care. I mean, so for example, I was having radiotherapy over Christmas. Started, you know, my treatment started, I don't know, mid-December and finished mid-Jan. So over Christmas. Now, they didn't do it on Christmas Day, but they did do it all around the other days. And I went in on Christmas Eve, and the radiography nurse presented me with a little hamper, a little box wrapped up. I mean, it contained, you know, silly things like Kit Kats and a pair of socks and I don't know, but how sweet. And she said, or he said actually, he said, oh yeah, we're giving this out to everybody from the radiotherapy team at Bart's. It's a hard enough process that you're going through now, and it's Christmas, so we wanted to. How lovely! Do you know what I mean? You just think it's such a sort of thoughtful thing. So I guess I tried to be appreciative when I could be. There wasn't a lot of time. You are in and out quite quickly with things like the radiotherapy. But with my oncologist, I brought her a gift back from India, a scarf, and you know, she was very touched by that. And I said, well, it was because of you being so flexible that I was able to go to India, and it meant a lot to me. Yeah, suddenly there was a connection, you know. Yeah. Yeah. They're under a lot of pressure, aren't they, in the NHS? Well, you must know that. Yeah.
Hi, Luke.
I was wondering if you could share a bit of an insight into your relationship with the men that you live with during this time, like
Oh, yeah.
shift in a relationship or how you relate to each other. Yeah.
There's a lot of laughter in our community, and that didn't stop. It wasn't like we went through some sort of somber thing together. I'm meant to be co-writing a book with Maitreya Bandhu, who's a very good friend of mine, a Dharma book. And he's the sort of writer, and I've been providing some of the input. Anyway, we got to the stage where I had to read, you know, some drafts of what he'd written, and I just wasn't in the headspace to do that. Partly you get sort of brain fog a bit, and anyway, I wasn't bothered about. And he would just tease me and say, you know, you're not helping with this book. You're not helping. I'm doing this book. You know, you're just going to have your name on the cover. You're not helping. How are you getting on with the book, Jnanavaca? And don't play the cancer card. And we'd laugh. And so there's this mixture of lots of love and kindness without it becoming maudlin or sentimental or just a sort of real, I don't know, real sort of brotherliness, I think. That's how it's felt. And that's been my experience. I've lived in that community for coming on 30 years. Obviously, lots of people have come and gone. But it's got a consistent quality of friendliness, love really, coupled with this brotherly teasing and delightful banter that we do for each other. And my cancer just got woven into the teasing, if you sort of, into the sort of into the whole thing, as well as it being very, people being very considerate. Yeah.
It's interesting because a lot of people can get quite like porcelain about you when you.
Oh yes, I see what you mean. And yeah, careful. No. I wouldn't want that, and they didn't. Yeah. I mean, I was saying to Tom that, I met one young woman in a sort of group that I was in and I just felt for her so much. She was probably in her 30s. She'd found out she'd got breast cancer. We were sort of doing a check-in in the group, and I had to sort of contain myself because, I couldn't say actually I've had some really euphoric experiences. I live with some really lovely people. I've got a whole dharmic context. I had to sort of hold something of that back. It would have been insensitive. She was reporting in about living with somebody who she doesn't really know, a flatmate, and who she's finding really irritating. And it just seemed like, oh my goodness, to find out you've got breast cancer, be in your 30s, be in a flat with a person you don't really know and you find irritating, who may not be that sympathetic, or, a lot of people are in those very difficult positions where I didn't have to, as I say, cook. I had my meals provided for me, lots of messages of kindness, people being, so I was in a very privileged position. And also, I went to this kind of group which was, there's the Maggie's Centre, which is for people with cancer, and they are really good in that they provide other sort of support, therapeutic support, etc. And there was this young woman, and she was saying, look, mindfulness will really help you. Not to me, she was saying it to the group, and she knew that I was, she'd said, what do you do? And I never quite know how to say, well, I teach Buddhism and meditation. And she blanched at that. She looked quite nervous. And anyway, she was sort of giving little instructions about how mindfulness will help, because we'll have intrusive thoughts that are frightening and so forth. And I just thought, oh goodness, I don't know how I'd be if I hadn't got years of practice. Now would not be the time that I could learn mindfulness. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how people can do that. And besides, for me, mindfulness in itself wouldn't have been enough. I needed the dharmic context of something beyond this phenomenal world and this physical form that is real. And I needed that context. And I just felt for the people who didn't have that and were being taught, oh, well, look, when you notice a thought, try not to take it seriously. Do you know what I mean? And you've got cancer and you might be on your own. So, I felt both sort of very fortunate and privileged and sad at times that other people don't have this. It makes me want to really try and help spread the Dharma more than ever. I think that's what's really needed for so many people. Not that I'm necessarily doing very much at the moment, but
Great, thanks, Jnanavaca. Maybe one or possibly two more. Hi there, Emma.
I just wondering how you use your practice if you're going through any physical pain or side effects of the treatment, how you cope with that pain.
how you practice with that. Again, I guess I don't know how I'd be if it was real pain. I didn't have any physical pain. My main side effects have been a sort of fatigue coupled with a sort of brain fog a bit. not sleeping so well. You get sort of weird, I get insomnia kind of thing. Got hot flushes, I'm having one now actually, which makes you sympathetic for menopausal women. You get hot flushes, and then sort of minorish side effects that didn't feel too painful, weren't too, so when I was tired, I would just rest, and again, I was fortunate enough to do that. But I was able to keep my meditation alive for most of the time, not all the time, but for most of the time, and that was very important to me. That was very, very important. I don't know how I would have been if the symptoms, side effects were worse, if there had been much pain or something like that. In a way, what's interesting for me, because I didn't have any symptoms before the diagnosis, and I haven't had much pain or physical issues in the treatment, what's been the main practice has been working with my mind. That has been the main practice, and I needed tools to help me work with my mind. I have noticed that of late, well, it's shifted again, but my treatment, sort of my hormone treatment, ended in March, early March, and I hadn't realized, maybe they told me, but I don't think they had, that it would take a long time, like months and maybe up to a year, for the body to recover. I somehow thought, I've done it, and now I'll recover. I should be able to just get on with it. And when that wasn't the case, and I started experiencing more fatigue, it was harder. I was getting more impatient. There was this, during the treatment, it was like I was psyched up for difficulty. Then after the treatment, I just wanted to get back on with my life and wasn't quite able to, and I'm still having to pace myself. And I'm having to work with being more patient. My expectations weren't quite met. Whereas before and during the treatment, they kept telling me about a whole heap of side effects that one could experience. And I didn't experience most of them. So I had a good experience. So it's all about the mind for me. It was all, do you know what I mean? And expectations and, yeah. Very different to having an illness where there's real physical symptoms or pain. I've never seen my prostate, I've never seen the cancer, I've never had symptoms, I've just been told that that was the case, and then you have some treatment. It's very much a mind thing in terms of practice. Yeah.
And one last question from Aidan.
Aidan.
When were you, what was the time you were most afraid during this whole process?
Probably when I first found out. And at that time, the MRI results indicated that the cancer had spread and was incurable. And I remember that night feeling afraid. I still managed to sleep, I think, but I think I was afraid. And then that lasted a day or so. One of the things at that time, I was about to go and co-lead a retreat with Vijayamala at Adhisthana. So the urologist was saying, you need more tests, and we can schedule in those tests like next week. But I was meant to be leading a retreat next week. And so my dilemma was, do I delay the tests, lead the retreat, or do I back out of leading the retreat with 2 days notice? So those next 2 days, it was like, that was my main preoccupation of what do I do? What's the best thing? In the end, I decided not to delay the tests, and Vasantra stepped in to lead the retreat in my place, to co-lead the retreat in my place. So why am I saying that? That was, maybe my anxiety got projected onto that rather than try and deal with the fact that I had cancer. Does that make sense? So for the first, then, yeah, I was worried about the retreat. And then, of course, I had this bone scan fairly quickly, and then they told me that it didn't look like it had spread. And then suddenly, having just localized prostate cancer was the best thing in the world. Do you know what I mean? Having possibly had a more advanced prostate cancer, now it was just localized. So then that added to this relief and even euphoria. A bit of a weird journey. You don't know where you are, but probably that was when I was most afraid. It's a bit scary not knowing what radiotherapy will do and so forth, but it was fine in the end.
Well, thanks very much, Jnanavaca, for answering questions as well. Maybe we just a last round of applause.
Thank you.